This is an all-access zone.
Still there in the middle. Order. Still there.
We're going to hear from their spotters, from the crew chiefs.
Clear, clear, clear.
All the communication that the drivers hear, you're going to have the opportunity to hear that throughout the day.
Bring it home, champs. We did it, guys. Yeah, you guys are awesome.
And you can get closer to the Championship 4 with Hot Pass on the NBC Sports app. You can get play-by-play coverage. It's a dedicated feed and multiple camera angles around Johnson, Busch, Logano, and Edwards. That coverage Sunday begins at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. Find out more at NBCSports.com/live as we ride along with Carl Edwards. And Carl Edwards is one of the Championship 4 and currently second quickest. Jimmy Johnson is the fastest now in this practice session. Kelly.
Rick, you talked about the distractions of the 22 team serving a penalty. Well, Carl's had to deal with his own distractions for the second week in a row. They've had issues getting his motor coach to the track. It broke down on its way to Phoenix. They got that fixed. And it was as it was headed here to Florida, it blew a tire, went off road, causing some damage. So they had a backup bus en route here, but that had its own issues, including a check engine light that was on. So when Carl got down here to Miami, he was without his motor coach, which also meant being without his clothes, his credential, all sorts of things. He and his PR man, Randy Fuller, had to go shopping just to get him some clothes to go to an event last night. He says that he has no coach here at the track. Denny Hamlin, his teammate, has offered up the services of his bus, but he's going to be kind of sharing with Dave Rogers, although he's not staying here at the track. He has other accommodations, but just doesn't have those creature comforts he's had all season long, Marty.
Kelly, Jimmy Johnson fastest thus far in just one lap, going out in qualifying trim, and obviously very happy with it. Immediately came in, hopped out of the race car. So the team with a lot of smiles down here in the 48 camp. So Steve and Jeff, I'm wondering what kind of salvo is that from the 48 team? Go out one lap, fastest, hop out of the car, and helmet off for Jimmy Johnson. So a lot of confidence down here among the 48 group.
Well, this is something we see the 48 do a lot. It's run qualifying only on Fridays. I've worked with Chad for years. I know he's always said that he picks on himself, says his mind can only work on one trim. I think that's a little inaccurate. But what he means is that focusing on qualifying, Rick, allows him to work on the minute details. And his opinion is to qualify on the pole, not just good, but on the pole. It comes down to those very small details, and only focusing on that between Jimmy, himself, his engineers. They've always felt that's been their strength. So I would say of all the teams in the garage, the 48 runs more qualifying only Fridays than really anyone.
And amazingly, Jimmy Johnson and this 48 team, they have a team that is put together that's been there for quite some time. I mean, Ron Malik has been a part of all the championships, right? All 6 of the championships that they've been able to earn. And Chad Knaus has been there for every win of Jimmy Johnson's career. So, I mean, this team has been around and together long enough that the details are taken care of. I mean, they are very focused and know how to win a championship.
And to keep the key personnel together, whether that's Chad or Ron Malik, the car chief, and what they can do is then the details and also just the attitude, Jeff, the demeanor and the attitude of the 48, they try to set that, and they do that by trying to keep the team together and the key personnel together through all the championships.
The 22 has gone on the racetrack, and unlike the 48, the 22 normally works on race trim, but now they've pulled out in Q trim because of that penalty. But I think they have a left rear tire rub, and I saw a little bit of puff right there. So he's going to go ahead and continue and finish this run. But right off the bat, the 22 Logano makes a Q run out of character, but they had to do that because of the penalty. They were going to lose too much time switching over. But that run is only 9th fastest. Tire rub, 9th fastest, a half a second off of the 48. So not the start that the 22 won.
And when you compare all 4 of the championship 4, Jimmy Johnson is first, Carl Edwards second, Logano now is 9th, and it's Kyle Busch that's 8th. So of the 4, Logano the slowest of those 4. Marty?
You see that tire up for Joey Logano when he was at speed, and you mentioned it, Jeff. That's one thing that the team kind of diverted from the normal plan. Todd Gordon normally likes to kind of spend some time in race trim, then switch over to qualifying trim. They felt like with that 15-minute penalty, they just didn't have time to do that today. So they're going to stick in qualifying trim this entire session. And Todd Gordon's usually a big fan of doing things the way they normally do things. Doesn't like to deviate from what they normally do at the racetrack. But here, this penalty already making them deviate early. So a couple of questions about that. You guys agree with the call to stick in qualifying trim this entire session for the 22 and deviating from the plan? I know you crew chiefs don't like to do it, but they've been kind of forced to do that here in the 22 camp this afternoon.
Yeah, Marty, I do not like deviating from the plan, and even more surprisingly, both Penske cars, Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano, are in qualifying trim, it would seem to me that they'd be better off discussing it beforehand, Jeff, and at least putting one of the cars in race trim, try to divide and conquer the weekend.
Yeah, it's not just about the car either. When the driver's accustomed to making race runs and then qualifying run, that's the rhythm they get in. They're able to read their race car, tell the crew chief what it's doing. They make changes for qualifying. So it's hugely different in how you drive the car. Rolling off in a Q trim run versus a race trim run is completely different. So not only is it a car thing and a crew chief thing, it also really affects the way the driver approaches the first lap on the racetrack.
And Todd Gordon underneath the car trying to figure out where that smoke was coming from, and obviously checking the left rear as well, where we saw a little bit of that smoke from. And he and Paul Wolf had that conversation that you mentioned, Steve, a moment ago about whether we want to go in different directions. He said, no, I want to treat the weekend exactly like we treated. I don't want us to do anything different than we normally would do. If the 2 or the 21 can help us out setup-wise, that's great. But I want to approach the weekend like we normally do. So, yes, they've had the curveball of that penalty kind of forcing them into qualifying trim this entire session, but he did not want the 2 to do anything special for them this weekend. Just wanted to stick to the normal plan.
Definitely different approaches. I'm not sure all the companies are doing that, Rick. We'll just have to see which pays off when qualifying's over this afternoon.
So 22 back in the garage, and again, everyone working on qualifying runs. So important here at Homestead in the last race.